Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin has promised to scale up production of a new hypersonic missile that
Putin has dropped another weapon that has rattled NATO leaders. The Avangard hypersonic missile renders traditional missile defense systems completely useless. This missile moves at breathtaking speeds, reaching Mach 27, and maneuvers unpredictably, making it nearly impossible to intercept. The Russians placed them in classified and highly secured silo facilities. So how does this weapon work, and why is it forcing the world's superpowers to rethink their approach to modern warfare? Join us as we break down everything you need about the missile that forever changed global security. Putin's Avangard hypersonic missile. The Russian Federation has shocked the world with a cluster of advanced weapons, but nothing compares to Avangard's hypersonic missile. This beast was announced by Putin himself, not the Russian Defense Ministry. Avangard is not your conventional weapon. It is a game changer that completely rewrote the rules. Since Putin revealed the weapon, NATO leaders have been scrambling for an answer. For decades, the United States and NATO relied on their missile defense systems. The idea was that American anti-ballistic missile systems would intercept any Russian missile attack before reaching its target. But Avangard changed everything. It was designed to be unstoppable, a hypersonic glide vehicle that could maneuver unpredictably at speeds no existing defense system could handle. The Pentagon called it a nightmare scenario. In Russia, it was known as Putin's Joker, the card that could trump everything the West had built to protect itself. But what makes Avangard so dangerous isn't just its speed. Keep waiting to find out. According to missile experts, what truly makes the Avangard potent is the fact that it doesn't follow a predictable path like traditional intercontinental ballistic missiles. Usually, an ICBM travels in a high arching trajectory, which makes it easier to track and intercept. But Avangard is an entirely new game. Avangard is launched by a rocket like a regular ICBM, but then separates and glides through the atmosphere, making constant course adjustments as it flows toward the target at breakneck speeds. In simple terms, it moves so fast and unpredictably that no one knows precisely where it will go until it's too late. Believe it or not, the numbers are staggering. During early tests, Russian officials reported that Avangard could reach speeds of Mach 20. Later, Putin claimed that in the denser layers of the atmosphere, it could push Mach 27. We are talking about 9.2 kilometers per second. In perspective, that's over 33,000 kilometers per hour, fast enough to cross the entire United States in about 6 minutes. And this isn't just some prototype or future concept. Russia has already deployed Avangard missiles in their strategic missile forces units, which are ready to launch if needed. The truth is that for years, Avangard was developed in complete secrecy. The project began in the early 2000s after the United States announced plans to build a missile defense system in Europe. Russian military officials saw this as a direct threat. According to Russian military analysts, the American missile shield in Europe could one day neutralize Russia's nuclear deterrent. So instead of competing in missile defense, they took another approach: build a weapon so fast and unpredictable that no defense system could ever stop it. Putin authorized billions of rubles for hypersonic research. Russian engineers and scientists worked under extreme security measures. The first successful test finally came in 2018 when an Avangard missile was launched from the Dombarovsky missile base and hit its target over 6,000 kilometers away in the Kamchatka Peninsula. Russian officials said U.S. intelligence had been caught off guard during the launch. Even with advanced satellite surveillance, the Americans didn't fully realize what Russia had been working on. But if you are wondering why this is such a badass weapon system, you are about to witness something truly mind-blowing. The most alarming part of Avangard is that it completely changes the idea of nuclear deterrence. Before, countries relied on something called mutually assured destruction. The idea is that if one side launched nuclear weapons, the other would respond, guaranteeing that both would be destroyed. This balance kept the world from a full-scale nuclear war throughout the Cold War period and many decades after. Missile defense systems were supposed to give countries like the US a safety net, a chance to stop an incoming attack before it reached its target, and the ability to launch their attacks on the enemy. However, the bad news for the United States and NATO is that Avangard cannot be stopped, and it is not currently being solved by technology. That means if Russia ever launched one, there would be no way to prevent the impact. That brings us to two questions. Would the US still respond if it knew it couldn't stop the attack? Would NATO take a different approach to nuclear strategy? You see, Avangard forces every military power to rethink what they thought they knew about warfare. After Putin's 2018 announcement, NATO leaders understood the new threat. U.S. intelligence had been monitoring Russia's hypersonic missile programs for years, but Avangard proved that Russia was ahead of schedule. The U.S. had been working on its hypersonic projects, but none were as advanced as a none revealed. In fact, none is ready to date. Remember that traditional ballistic missile defense systems like the U.S. ground-based mid-course defense rely on tracking a missile's trajectory and launching an interceptor to collide in space. But Avangard doesn't follow a predictable path. It zigzags and changes altitude in the atmosphere, making it nearly impossible to calculate where it will be. Avangard could shift direction at the last second, even if an interceptor missile were launched, making it nearly untouchable. Another bad news is that Avangard is not alone. It is part of a larger strategy that includes hypersonic weapons like the Kinzhal and Zircon missiles. Kinzhals have already been launched by MiG-31 fighter jets in Ukraine. Zircons are designed for naval attacks. Russia claims that it can strike targets at Mach 10. But the truth is that Kinzhal and Zircon are still nothing compared to the Avangard. This brings us to the question of how Russia plans to use Avangard. We are about to answer that and many more. Stay with us. How the unstoppable missile works. Russia stationed Avangards in underground silos in the Orenburg region, far from Russia's borders, making it harder to detect before launch. These silos are heavily fortified, with massive steel blast doors designed to withstand direct bomb hits. Inside each silo, highly trained officers oversee the launch process. Around 6,000 Russian officers rotate through intense training daily, preparing for a moment they hope will never come. The launch process is straightforward but terrifying. A button is pressed, the massive silo doors open, and the missile fires into the sky, reaching hypersonic speeds within seconds. At that point, no defense system on Earth can stop it. With Avangard officially in service, military analysts worldwide are scrambling to understand what this means for the future of warfare. Some experts believe this could trigger a new arms race, with the US and China rushing to develop their hypersonic weapons. Some experts also believe that Avangard increases the likelihood of a nuclear war. If a country thinks it has an unstoppable weapon, would it not be more willing to use it? What is certain now is that this is just the beginning. Avangard is only one piece of a much more significant shift in military technology. Hypersonic weapons are real, deployed, and changing how countries plan for future war. And if Avangard is only the first of its kind, what comes next could be even more shocking. Anyone can build a fast missile, but making one that stays in control at hypersonic speeds while dodging defenses is a different challenge. Russia cracked that code, making Avangard a nightmare for anyone trying to stop it. Let's break it down. Avangard doesn't just go fast. It enters a speed category that completely changes warfare. The term hypersonic means anything traveling at Mach 5 or 5 times the speed of sound, but Avangard doesn't stop at 5. It reaches Mach 20, sometimes even Mach 27. That's so fast that air itself becomes a problem. At those speeds, the friction from the atmosphere generates extreme heat, hot enough to melt most metals. This can never be an issue for regular missiles because they follow a predictable path. That is not all. They also spend most of their time in space before falling back down. But Avangard glides through the atmosphere, meaning it has to survive continuous high-temperature exposure. To solve this, Russia developed a heat-resistant shell that protects the weapon as it travels. The exact materials they use are classified, but Russian scientists claim it is an advanced composite light, durable material capable of withstanding thousands of degrees of heat. But there is another problem. Surviving the heat is only one part of the equation. Moving at hypersonic speeds also creates a plasma cloud around the missile, which can block radio signals. Usually that would make communication impossible. Yet Avangard has a way to remain in contact with the ground control station, which suggests Russia developed technology to pierce through the plasma barrier. And talking about unstoppability, hypersonic weapons don't need to follow the shortest path. Avangard can take a roundabout route, avoiding known missile defense areas. This means even the most advanced radar systems won't see it coming until too late. And let's talk about the destructive power of this missile. Avangard was built to deliver massive destruction. It can carry nuclear or conventional warheads, but let's be honest. The real threat is its nuclear capability. An Avangard missile can carry a warhead with a blast yield of up to 2 megatons. That's 133 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima during the Second World War. At hypersonic speeds, a weapon like this doesn't need an explosion to cause damage. The sheer kinetic energy from moving that fast could destroy entire city blocks. Some military analysts believe that even without a nuclear warhead, Avangard could still cause devastation just by slamming into a target at full speed. But remember that Russia is not designing Avangard for conventional strikes. The primary purpose is strategic, to ensure that if nuclear war ever begins, Russia has a weapon that can bypass all defenses and guarantee destruction. This makes Avangard not just a weapon, but a psychological tool that causes nightmares for Russia's adversaries. Now let's talk about how Russia deploys the Avangard missile. It is like nothing we've ever seen, and believe it or not, you don't want to miss the parts ahead. Avangard missile silos in the US response. Like the Zircon, Russia and China's hypersonic missiles are air-launched and seaborne, but Avangard is not launched from aircraft or ships. It relies on modified Soviet-era UR-100N ICBM silos. The UR-100N are massive intercontinental ballistic missiles initially designed in the 1970s. But these old rockets are not a waste. They're an advantage. Russia has tested and refined the UR-100N for decades. It is highly reliable. So when Russia developed the Avangard, they didn't need to build a brand new launch system from scratch. Instead, they adapted an existing one to carry Avangard. The result? Quick deployment while saving the costs of developing an entirely new missile storage system. These ICBMs are stored in hardened silos, deep underground, protected by layers of reinforced concrete and steel. Even if enemy forces were to detect an impending launch, destroying these silos before Avangard takes off would be nearly impossible. Stopping the missile is out of the question once the rocket is in the air. The United States and NATO suddenly faced a reality they weren't unprepared for. Their expensive missile defense systems are not capable of handling something like Avangard. This means that in an actual conflict, Avangard could strike before the US or any other country even had a chance to react. Because of this, military leaders had to return to the drawing board. Instead of focusing on missile interception, which was proving ineffective, countries started looking at new ways to counter hypersonic threats. They finally came up with some strategies. For instance, the United States is working to improve early detection. US military planners believe that if they could spot Avangard the moment it launched, they might have a slightly better chance of reacting. This led to a push for more advanced radar systems and better satellite surveillance. The goal was to find a way to track Avangard's movement as soon as possible, even if stopping it was still challenging. Another approach was boosting offensive capabilities. If a country couldn't stop an incoming Avangard missile, the next best option was to make sure they had weapons just as powerful. This is why the US and China began rapidly developing their hypersonic programs. If Russia could strike without warning, the only way to restore balance was to have the same ability. The US military shifted billions of dollars into hypersonic glide vehicle projects, hoping to develop their version of Avangard. But here's where things get even more complicated. Hypersonic missiles like Avangard don't just change military strategy, they change global politics. Their military strength shapes the balance of power between countries, and Russia's hypersonic advantage suddenly gave it more leverage. It forced other countries to rethink their alliances, increase their military budgets, and change their diplomatic strategies. Nations that once relied on US protection began questioning whether the US could defend them if Avangard were in play. At the same time, Avangard also created pressure for new arms control agreements. In the past, when new powerful weapons were introduced, countries often worked out deals to limit their use, just like they did with nuclear weapons during the Cold War. Some leaders started discussing whether there should be similar agreements for hypersonic missiles. The problem? No one wanted to be the first to give up their advantage. Russia had already deployed Avangard, so they had no reason to stop, and the US and China wouldn't pause their programs if Russia kept advancing. Meanwhile, smaller countries were watching closely. Hypersonic technology could completely change military conflicts worldwide if it became more widely available. A nation that couldn't compete with major powers before might suddenly become a serious threat if it developed or acquired hypersonic missiles. The Houthi forces in Yemen have now developed hypersonic missiles and successfully launched them at targets in Israel. Similarly, the Islamic Republic of Iran and the North Koreans have claimed breakthroughs in hypersonic technology. Experts are now afraid of hypersonic proliferation. That is a situation where these weapons could spread to unstable regions or in the hands of terrorists, making future wars even harder to control. The real problem is that no one knows precisely where this is headed. The arms race is already in motion. The US, China, and Russia are all pouring money into hypersonic weapons, and other countries are trying to catch up. The world has seen new military technologies change warfare, but Avangard is a turning point. What are countries doing right now to deal with this threat? And is there anything that could make Avangard or its next generation successor obsolete? Let's find out. What comes next in the race for missile supremacy? The next big question is not who will have the next hypersonic weapon. It is what hypersonic this technology means for the future of warfare. Currently, 3 countries dominate the hypersonic arms race: Russia, the United States, and China. Russia made the first move with Avangard, but the US and China are not far behind. Both countries are developing hypersonic glide vehicles, trying to create something as fast, unpredictable, and deadly. The US has been testing multiple hypersonic projects under programs like the Hypersonic Air-Breathing Weapon Concept and the Army's Long-Range Hypersonic Weapon. The Long-Range Hypersonic Weapon Program is also called the Dark Eagle Program. This program is designed to counter threats like Russia's Avangard and China's DFCF. According to the Pentagon, the Dark Eagle program will create a ground-launched system that uses a hypersonic glide vehicle to strike targets at speeds exceeding Mach 5 with extreme precision. Unlike traditional ICBMs, which follow predictable trajectories, Dark Eagle can maneuver mid-flight, making it incredibly difficult to intercept, just like the Russian Avangard. The US military has been rapidly developing and testing the system, with plans to deploy it to units shortly. While details about its full capabilities remain classified, experts believe Dark Eagle could reach enemy targets thousands of miles away within minutes, giving the US a new strategic advantage in modern warfare. If you think the Dark Eagle program is terrifying, wait for the big revelation. China shocked the world when it launched the DFCF hypersonic glide vehicle. It circled the globe before hitting its target. But here's the thing: Avangard isn't Russia's last move. Military technology never stands still, and Russia is already working on new ways to make its hypersonic weapons even more advanced. For instance, Russia is increasing Avangard's maneuverability so that even improved tracking systems won't be able to predict its flight path. They are also working to extend its range, ensuring it can strike anywhere on the planet, no matter where it's launched. The real game changer, though, could be hypersonic drones. Right now, Avangard is a one-time use weapon. Once launched, it hits its target, and that's it. But imagine a hypersonic drone that can fly at Mach 25, adjust its course mid-flight, and even return to base after a mission. Countries are already working on it, and if they figure it out, it will completely change the face of modern warfare. A hypersonic drone could be used for surveillance, electronic warfare, or even delivering smaller hypersonic missiles, creating a new kind of weapon that no defense system could stop. Of course, the big question is, can anything stop hypersonic weapons? The short answer right now is no. Traditional missile defense systems, like THAAD and Aegis, were designed to stop slower, more predictable threats. But that doesn't mean the US and its allies are not trying to devise a solution. Some experts believe space-based tracking systems are the best way to counter hypersonic missiles. The idea is to use satellites to detect a hypersonic weapon the moment it's launched, giving defenders more time to react. The US has already launched its Hypersonic and Ballistic Tracking Space Sensor, a satellite designed specifically for this purpose. But that is not all. The Pentagon is also looking to deploy directed energy weapons. They are essentially high-powered lasers. Unlike traditional interceptors, which rely on missiles to shoot down incoming threats, laser weapons could theoretically turn off a hypersonic missile in flight before it reaches its target by frying the internal electronic components of the rocket. The US military is already testing laser systems for missile defense, but the challenge is making them powerful enough to work at long range and high speeds. Researchers are also working on counter-hypersonic missiles. These weapons will intercept hypersonic glide vehicles in mid-flight. The problem is that hitting a target moving at Mach 20 or more is like trying to shoot a bullet out of the air with another bullet. The technology for this is still in its early stages, but the US and NATO are pouring resources into it. Beyond military responses, let's talk about how this will affect global security. The more countries develop hypersonic weapons, the more unstable the world becomes. In the past, treaties like START and Intermediate Nuclear Forces helped control the spread of atomic weapons. But there's no global agreement on hypersonic arms yet. Some experts believe a new treaty is needed before hypersonic weapons become too widespread. However, others argue that countries won't agree to limits unless they feel confident they can counter the threat. This means that arms control might only happen after an effective defense system is in place. So where does all of this leave us? The world is now in a hypersonic arms race where no one wants to be left behind. Avangard was the first step, but the next wave of hypersonic weapons is coming. The US is trying to close the gap. China is pushing forward with its advanced programs, and Russia is looking for new ways to stay ahead. Meanwhile, military leaders and scientists are working around the clock to find a way to defend against a weapon that currently has no accurate counter. The world has officially entered a new era of warfare, and what happens next will determine global security for decades. Three major things are shaping the future: the hypersonic arms race, new defense strategies, and next-generation technology that could make today's missiles obsolete. Thank you for staying with us. Do you think the US can beat the Avangard hypersonic missile? Share your opinions with us in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen and you will enjoy it.